full of infiltrators.
Well, here is the big breaking news coming in at this hour. Prime Minister Narendra Modi has just held a phone call with President Donald Trump, and that's his tweet that you can see on air. He says had a very warm and engaging conversation with President Trump. We reviewed the progress in our bilateral relations and discussed regional and international developments. India and the US will continue to work together for global peace, stability, and prosperity. Now, obviously, in the background of this is the negotiations, or rather, are the negotiations that are happening between the teams, the Indian and the US delegations, the talks on the trade deal that are happening in Delhi at this moment. I'm being joined by Shikha Salaria, who's my correspondent. Shikha, what are we learning? What has been discussed in this phone call, and how long has this phone call been?
This is a very important phone call that we are tracking between the leaders of both the nations, India and the United States. What we've learned is that the Prime Minister Narendra Modi has spoken to the US President Donald Trump, and the two leaders have reviewed progress in the India-US Comprehensive Global Strategic Partnership. This is very important because this is coming after the Russian President Vladimir Putin's visit to India, and also even as India and the United States both are engaged in a major dialogue in connection with the trade pact between the two, and India is keen to have the trade pact very soon formulated. And we're also witnessing that there've been a lot of discussions between the two countries over tariffs, and tariffs has been one subject that has hurt India the most. Remember, India was slapped by 50% tariff, which was higher than most other nations on which tariffs have been imposed by the United States. So this is a major conversation, and what we're learning is that the two leaders have agreed to work closely to address shared challenges and advance common interests. And this conversation is also important because the two leaders seem to have had a very positive conversation in the global backdrop of not only tariffs but also the geopolitical earthquakes that have been witnessed across the geopolitical spectrum in the backdrop of the Ukraine war, and especially the role of the Indian Prime Minister coming to fore and also being discussed time to time. The US has also nudged India to ask its Russian counterpart to put a stop to this Ukraine war. But now what we are learning is that the two leaders have talked about expanding cooperation in critical technologies, energy, defense, security, and other priority areas that are central to the implementation of the India-US Compact that is catalyzing opportunities for military partnership, accelerated commerce and technology for the 21st century. So this is a very significant development in the India-US relations because it happens to have come at a time when India's role at the geopolitical level has been very significantly talked about, and this is a time which is not only crucial for India but also for the world vis-a-vis the Indian role that the role that India is playing at the global level. And given that India has always pushed for better relations between India and the United States, and also especially after the advent of the US President Donald Trump, who has been on a tariff spree and has been slapping tariffs across different nations. India has been walking a tightrope and indulging in a tightrope walk in vis-a-vis its relations to the US, and has been ensuring that whatever policy Donald Trump follows, India has to be very, very firm on its own national interests and ensure that whatever policies the US comes up with, the Indian nation manages to ensure to keep its own interest, its own national interest above any other subject. So clearly, this is being viewed in the geopolitical circles as a positive development, and we'll have to see how much this is going to translate into the discussions between the two nations when it comes to...
Right, Shikha, stay on with me because there is some clear context to this particular conversation that has happened between the two leaders. We've had the CA of India, Nageswaran, come out and said that he'll be surprised if India and US don't sign that trade deal by March. You have on the other side, from the US side, they've also said that India is offering a very good deal to them and and they've also acknowledged India as a very tough negotiator. Piyush Goyal is saying that these trade talks are happening very positively as well. So is this phone call now an indication, that we are very, very close to signing that trade deal with the United States?
That only time will tell how close we are to signing this deal. But one thing that we can be very sure about is that both the nations have admitted to be very willing to ensure that this trade pact comes through. Because remember, this is coming at a time when not only the U.S. president but also other dignitaries and officials in the U.S. government have nudged its top leadership to ensure that this particular pact goes through. Remember, several congressmen had in fact targeted Donald Trump for not being able to keep up good ties with the Indian nation and the leadership at a time when India has always pushed for better relationship with the United States. So the congressmen had targeted Trump and also demanded that this relationship, that efforts be made to fix this relationship, which is a very, very crucial relationship, not only for India but also for US. Because remember, the Indian government has been playing, the Indian leadership has been playing a major role in the geopolitical spectrum when in the backdrop of the Ukraine war, and the world is looking at not only India but also Prime Minister Narendra Modi and the role he can play to sort of ensure that some kind of a negotiation or a mediation.
Absolutely, Shikha. We also have Dr. Sharad Kohli joining us at this moment. He's a senior economist, obviously. Dr. Sharad Kohli, how do you read this particular phone call that has happened between the Prime Minister and President Trump?
Well, good evening to you and viewers of NewsX. I think it's a step in a positive direction because only a couple of days ago, President Donald Trump, issued a statement about rice threatening India with tariffs again. And I think he's quite unpredictable. And but Prime Minister Modi and India has maintained a very matured stance. We have not shown overreaction to anything that they have been saying and doing. We've just been very constant, very stable, and we've constantly made efforts for these trade talks to be done. I think two of the trade representatives for the U.S. Trade Department are here. They are talking to Commerce Ministry representatives, and I hope something comes out. There have been a lot of dialogues earlier also, but this phone call between the two heads of the state, I think they might make a lot of difference, because at the end of the day, the trade representatives, whatever they discuss, it has to be President Trump who has to finalize the deal. So I think this dialogue may just be a sign of something positive coming out, even if it's not a full-fledged deal. At least the first step in a trade deal would be welcomed by both the countries, I would say.
Right. Dr. Sharad Kohli, there's some very important context to this particular phone call, right? Because both the teams, we've had these negotiations going on for a year or more than a year now. Both the teams are, obviously the US delegation is in India currently. We've had very positive statements being made in the past 24 hours, with the CEA even saying that he'd be surprised if there is no trade deal by March. So are we now looking at some sort of a timeline as to when this trade deal between India and the US concludes?
No, I think the taste of the pudding is in eating it, because as you rightly said, these dialogues have happened a number of times. In fact, personally speaking, as an economist, I stopped keeping track of how many times both the parties have met, either in India or in the US. I was rather waiting for something concrete to come out as an announcement, rather than feeling happy about just the dialogues, because the dialogues have been happening a number of times. But each dialogue, leads to optimism. Each dialogue, deliberation, leads to the hope. So optimism and hope are the two words that we can bank upon as of now. And let's hope something comes out. And I said it may not be a full-fledged deal, but at least some breakthrough being made, because India has drawn a red line on agri-products. And the U.S. is very keen to export its soybean and, other products to India which are genetically modified, which India definitely cannot allow. But some kind of a solution can be worked out, where both the nations can come to a kind of a consensus. However, as I said, the taste of the pudding would be in eating it. So unless it comes out now, I think we can only express optimism and hope.
Right, Dr. Sharad Kohli, thank you so much again for your extensive analysis, as it has always been. We also have Professor Madam Nalapat joining us on the telecast right now. Professor, how do you read this particular phone call that has happened between the two heads of the state, sir?
Look, the fact is, Prime Minister Modi is always for peace. Always. And that is why, for example, he cut short the Operation Sindoor, because he is for peace, above all a man of peace. And as far as Trump is concerned, he campaigned and won on the basis of peace. So as far as Modi is concerned, he has always known Donald Trump from the time he was president, from the time, and he has kept good relations with him. So I hope that, common sense will prevail over nonsensical ego clashes in the Trump administration. And once again, India and the U.S. will be security partners. So that's very, very important for the democratic countries, that India and the U.S. remain very strong security partners. And that is a fact.
Absolutely, sir. So, we've now almost come to the end of 2025, which hasn't been a very positive year when it comes to, at least the, economic ties between the two countries. So, are we now possibly looking at, a summit or a meeting happening in 2026, and that is what this phone call has been about?
Look, the Prime Minister will be unbending on Indian priorities. He's not going to give way on genetically modified rice, which, as Dr. Kohli will tell you, is totally tasteless. Unlike Indian basmati, consumers in America love basmati. They'll pay for it, despite the tariffs, they'll pay more for it, and Donald Trump will lose votes. That's what he's going to do, I can tell you. So I agree that the proof of the pudding is in the eating. As far as Prime Minister Modi is concerned, he is sincere about it. As far as Donald Trump is concerned, well, we have to wait and see. Thank you.
Absolutely, Professor. Thank you so much for your analysis on this particular phone call. We also have Ambassador Suresh Kumar Goyal joining us on the phone call. Sir, how do you read this conversation that has happened between President Trump and Prime Minister Narendra Modi?
Well, this actually came as a bit of a news, sudden development. Two things I would say here. First of all, after Putin's visit to India, I would have thought that President Trump would have called earlier rather than now. But his calling when the trade peace of the USA is also in India is very significant, and that shows the great deal of importance that Trump attaches to the trade talks now. Particularly if you remember that the head of the trade delegation has indicated that it has been the India's best offer, so clearly indicating that there are limits and maybe India will not go beyond what is on the table at the moment. That is number one. And number two, I have read the transcript of the conversation between the two just now. And it is interesting to note that the major length of the conversation was devoted to compact in terms of cooperation between India and the US in critical technologies, energy. Trade is, of course, part of it, strategic partnership. It shows that Trump is very interested in working with India on critical technologies and energy, promoting its own exports of energy to India. There is no indication, and I'm saying it with some gravity, there is no indication in that conversation that Trump is prepared or ready to make concessions to India, either on trade or tariffs. And therefore, the conversation is important, but I will really wait for developments for the next few days to see if it has any impact on the trade talks, because that is of the critical importance as far as India and the USA are concerned.
Absolutely, sir. Ambassador, as you were correctly saying, the fact that this phone call obviously comes after, there has been hectic conversations and very positive statements being made. but proof of the pudding is obviously going to be in the eating. So are we now expecting some sort of, respite coming for India as far as punitive tariffs are concerned?
I don't know, and that's what I said. There is no indication in the conversation so far that I've read that President Trump is prepared to make any concessions to India, either on tariff or on the trade. Now, that doesn't mean anything because we know that President Trump takes decisions at the heat of the moment. There is never any clear indication as to what he's thinking. But so far, all I can say is that the conversation did not indicate any concession coming from Trump on trade or tariff. Let us see what happens tomorrow.
Right, sir. Sir, before I let you go, one final question to you. Can we now expect, some sort of a meeting or a visit either made by Prime Minister Narendra Modi or President Trump coming next year, and some sort of a physical meeting now happening between the two leaders after this particular phone call and the negotiations that have happened?
That would be premature. Prime Minister Modi had gone to Washington only earlier this year, more or less immediately after the election of President Trump. I don't think that Prime Minister Modi will be in a rush to visit Washington. President Trump is expected to visit India next year for the meeting. President Trump has not given any indication that he will come here. He will recall the Quad meeting is expected to take place, but Trump has given no indication so far whether he will come or not. But it will be good and it will reflect the change in attitude of President Trump towards India if he does confirm he's coming for the meeting for Quad next year.
Thank you so much, Ambassador, for joining us and giving us your perspective on this story. Well, that is the headline for now, viewers. President Donald Trump and Prime Minister Narendra Modi holding that all-important phone call as negotiations are happening in Delhi as we speak. We'll keep our eyes on this story at the top of it as well. For now, slipping into a very, very short break.